Hi. Hello. Say hello to your friends. You have stinky breath. Tell them. Can I make my video? They like you better anyway. Why, hello again, endurance nerds. We're back again for another Zwift Academy road workout for workout number 3, the finisher. And if you're doing a long variant of this workout, you're likely to feel like a live action character from Mortal Kombat during a finisher. Now, if you don't know what that means, allow me to show you.
Let's finish him. It's not on.
But for those of you doing the longer variants of all of these workouts, you are in for an overall tough academy. Between these and the races, I can't decide which is the toughest academy we've had. It's either the first one or this one. They're difficult in different ways, but these are serious. If you go through all these long variants, you want to go into them prepared, and I hope these videos are going to help you do it. Now, I learned my lesson, and I did the shorter variant of this workout today, and I got to understand where things are. It definitely wasn't a great workout, different and better than the last workout was. I definitely didn't have that weird phlegm involvement and nonsense. My heart rate was actually higher than usual, which actually was reassuring because that's normal. That's to be expected when you're coming back from illness or even some time off. But it definitely didn't feel great. I was still feeling some lagging fatigue, a little bit of burning in the lungs that, again, sometimes happens with deconditioning or when you're coming back from an illness. So I wasn't altogether concerned, but I did feel like I was starting to push my luck as I got closer to the latter parts of the workout. So it's certainly been a frustrating and definitely a humbling experience, but I know I need to be patient. Now, I want to take a minute and talk about what I plan to do for the rest of this series. If you just want to get right into the workout, you can check out the chapters down below and skip ahead. But those of you who want to know what my plans are for the next couple of videos, I have made a decision that for the remainder of the workouts in the academy, I am going to default to the shorter variant. I still have several days left on my 10-day course of my antibiotics. I need to let those run their course. I don't need to be completely sedentary and with my feet up, but I need to be very measured in terms of my energy expenditure and just let my body recover from this illness. I know I roasted myself a little bit in some good fun and with some humor in the last video, but to be serious for a second, what I did doing workout number 2 and pushing through it, even though I knew things weren't going well, it was reckless. It was somewhat dangerous. I'm not trying to catastrophize here, but given the bacterial nature of this infection and what I could have done to my heart and my lungs by trying to push through and all of that kind of crossover between my airway and my esophagus and hacking up disgustingness, I could have really set myself back from both a training and a health perspective. It was a dumb move, and part of it came from my own ignorance and lack of context when it came to strep. A bacterial infection does not behave the same way that a viral infection does. They are categorically different. I'm used to coming out of a viral infection like the cold, the flu, coronavirus, where like a typical virus, once you start to feel symptom-free, now you're just dealing with the lagging fatigue and you just need to be patient with getting back to normal. You're not necessarily going to do much further damage. When it comes to bacterial infections, they can be a little bit more pernicious. The acute symptoms may be gone, but there's still going to be risk in the system. So I should have been a little bit more diligent in my research, especially given the virulence of the strain that was going around this year. And I need to continue to keep that top of mind as we continue through the rest of these workouts. I did consider taking a week pause and then coming back and doing the longer variants of these workouts, but it just didn't seem to make too much sense. And that's for a couple of reasons. My October ended up being kind of a forced off season for me between some unfortunate personal events that happened early in the month. And then I had family in town and a lot of visiting, and between that and work, didn't have really much time to train. Then I had busy work weeks, and then I went right into illness. So I was really light on my training in October. So even if I waited a week to recover, I'm pretty deconditioned at this point, and I'm still going to struggle with these workouts. And to what end? What am I going to learn from these workouts that I don't already know? Given that I'm rolling into my base season in the first week of December, it's not like those insights are going to help me much because I'm going into a traditional base block. So not only would I not be getting much value out of the workouts myself, but I'd be delaying getting the videos out into the library, and I may miss the opportunity to get those videos out in front of those individuals who might be doing the workouts earlier or out of order. So it just makes more sense for me to do the shorter workouts and get those videos out in the short term versus long term. I still want to go through this journey with you, but it's just the right thing to do the shorter variants. And I guess to be vulnerable for a second, that this is a tough decision for me to make. No, it's not that serious. They're workouts on Zwift Academy, but I do default to doing the hard thing and not necessarily taking the easy or the comfortable path. But in this case, I I've realized that I'm not taking the easy path. This is actually the harder path for me to do. This is not my default. I have to make a conscious effort to do something that stands against my pride and a little bit of my ego, to acknowledge the fact that I am not physiologically in a place to do these long workouts where maybe several weeks back, these would have been a lot more achievable for me. And I know for a few of you that might be a little bit disappointing that I'm not experiencing the long workouts, and maybe you might think that I'm being a little disingenuous in reviewing these long workouts and talking about them with no skin in the game and not putting my money where my mouth is. But I do believe that the vast majority of you understand that life happens, things happen, we have to give ourselves some grace, and we'll still glean a lot of value from these videos and understanding what you're getting into. I am perfectly capable of reviewing and analyzing these workouts without experiencing them. So with that preamble out of the way, let's talk about the workout. Now, I do want to talk again about the difference between the shorter and the longer variant, because it's going to be a very similar narrative that I had for the last video, where the shorter variant of this workout, for most people who would not be considered those beginners in structured training, is not necessarily going to be fit for the intended purpose of the naming convention and the description of the workout. There's just not enough load here in a short 45-minute workout to evaluate your 30-second and your 2-minute power in a fatigued state. The exception would be is if you go into this workout fatigued, it's going to simulate the same idea, because you're going to be able to take a workout like this one. Workout number 3 can be compared directly to workout number 1 with the very same test intervals, 2 30-second intervals and 2 2-minute intervals towards the end of the workout. But the difference is, what does it look like when you're fresh and primed? And then what does it look like when you have some load built into the system, like at the end of a long effort or a race or a group ride? Those power deliverables are going to be different. How much different? That's for you to determine when you go through these evaluations. Ideally, the short and long versions of these particular types of assessments would probably be 60 minutes and 90 minutes, which would be more akin to what you would see in maybe a Cat 5, 4, or maybe even a 3 rider versus a Cat 1, 2, or 3 rider, and the distances that you might see in terms of races or power execution. But understanding that 60 minutes is not always achievable and trying to make a time frame that's a little bit more accessible for the time crunch cyclist, I understand why they've chosen to do the 45-minute versus the 60-minute for the shorter workout. I guess I really don't know what the right solution to that is, because I think they're going in the right direction with some of the assessments and the intended deliverables for these workouts, but the shorter workouts don't necessarily fit that mold. Perhaps the right compromise is to just create 2 different pathways. So the shorter pathway just has completely different intended purposes of the workout than the longer ones, and then just allow people to get credit for the academy for mixing and matching maybe any 6 workouts between the 2. I know that makes the program a little bit more confusing and complicated, but sometimes it looks like these shorter variants are kind of a force fit. I'm not saying that they're actually bad. From a load perspective and an overall design perspective, they're decent for the period of time that they're crunched in between. But I think it's a little bit misleading if you're not in that beginner camp to read the description of the workout, read what you're trying to be testing for, and realize that, well, I don't have enough fatigue after 2 4-minute priming sets at FTP to really simulate being fatigued like I would be out in the real world. So you need to decide what fits into your training and what you want to do. Like I mentioned with the last workout, if you really are intent on getting this evaluation done, you might want to table this for when you have a little bit more time on a weekend or maybe in a morning off or what have you. But let's jump right into the longer workout so we can talk about the primary design. So you're going to get quite a bit of load into this workout because the intention is to fatigue you before you go into those 30-second and your 2-minute intervals. So you're going to start with a 20-minute block. It's going to be a sustained effort at 88% of your FTP. So that's right about in that sweet spot range. So that sliver of execution right between your tempo at zone 3 and then your low threshold, so 95% of your FTP. But it's going to be quite a pinch, right? Sweet spot is certainly not easy, and it's something that people need to train. So many of you may struggle to hold sweet spot for 20 minutes if you haven't trained up to it. So this is certainly not a workout that's designed for beginners or people who have not developed those energy systems. So bear that in mind, and that might be where it's appropriate to do the shorter workout to get the credit because you want to go through the academy, but this is something that you might want to work your way into as you continue along your training journey. Then you're going to get a brief recovery, and you're going to do 2 efforts of 8 minutes apiece at FTP. So you've already started to tax your muscular endurance a little bit with that 88% of FTP, and then you're going to do 2 8-minute efforts at FTP. Those are definitely going to feel tough and going to further drain the system. Is it achievable? Sure, but if you haven't trained your muscular endurance, and let's face it, your mental endurance, you're going to struggle here. That's okay. you're here to learn. After you do that, you're going to do one more ramp set that's going to take you at just sub your FTP up to your VO2 max at about 115% of your FTP, just to give your legs one final jab before you go into those testing sets. And just like the shorter variant and just like workout number 1, you're going to do 2 efforts at 30 seconds apiece at free ride, so as fast as you can, a long sprint type of effort, so 10 out of 10 in terms of RPE, another brief rest, and then you're going to do those 2-minute efforts. And this is where you're probably going to see quite a bit of difference between workout number 1 and workout number 3. How high in your VO2 max or your anaerobic zones, depending on your abilities, are you able to achieve once you've already depleted the system quite a bit here? And then you should be able to compare those 1-to-1 with workout number 1. And it's going to give you a very good indication of how fatigue resistant you are. Is it a drastic difference or is it a slight difference? You are going to see some difference. Nobody maintains 100% of their open free testability after fatigue. But if you're only seeing 5% attrition in your power, you're pretty solid in terms of fatigue resistance. If you're seeing 50% attrition, maybe you've got some work to do. Now, just like workout number 2, here comes broken record again. You're going to want to fuel for this. This is going to be a glycolytic workout, which means it's going to be using sugar stores for pretty much the entirety of this workout. And in order to execute your greatest potential, you're going to want to make sure that you're fueled. Now, I always get 1 or 2 people that come out of the woodwork that talk about their own personal experience doing 90-minute, 2-hour workouts without bringing any fuel on board, or how the research indicates that you can work for 80 to 90 minutes at maximal lactate steady state and still have enough glycogen within your muscles and your liver to complete the workout. Come here. No, come here. No, you're not going to do that. It doesn't make any sense. This is not a test to see how well you can deplete your glycogen. That's not how we train. Yes, your muscles and your liver can give you enough glycogen to get through 80 to 90 minutes, but I would use that in an emergency or necessity-driven situation. And let me tell you why. Number 1, not everybody has trained metabolic efficiency, and your ability to use glycogen as a fast and available fuel source efficiently for your muscular utilization is going to vary by individual. It's not necessarily going to be the most efficient. Your endogenous fuel source, your body wants to maybe spare that a little bit more than pulling in an exogenous fuel source like having a gel or having some sort of drink mix. Number 2, you want to optimize for your best possible performance here. The body is going to give you only what is necessary in terms of sugar, but if you can mobilize that extra by bringing those extra sugars on board and feed the muscles a little bit more, you can reach for that little bit of extra power. That's why there's a lot of research and nutrition dialed in around the difference between using 60 grams of carbs per hour for basic training and 90 grams of carbs per hour or even more in terms of performance or racing, because more sugar helps. There's an upper limit, but having additional sugar over the baseline on board can help you to reach for those higher levels of execution. And number 3, and this one is honestly the most important, is it comes down to recovery. If you do a workout like this and you drain yourself right down through your muscle glycogen and into your liver glycogen, your ability to come back the next day or in 2 days to be able to perform again is going to be all but obliterated, because your body is going to take on all of the fuel that you should be bringing in after a workout and the following day that are going to go towards rebuilding those muscles and super compensating from the work you're doing, and it's going to be redirected to refilling the liver and muscle glycogen to just those baseline needs, not to optimize for recovery. You're going to pay the price for not bringing sugars on board for workouts like this, whether it's in the workout, after the workout, or both. So fuel. Go into this workout fueled, and because the duration of the entire workout is about 90 minutes, this is where I would continue to take some fuel on board as you go. You could just kind of sip away at an energy drink or take a few gels evenly timed throughout the workout so that you're replacing what you're using and you can optimize throughout the test. I did talk about Cadence a little bit in the last workout, and I'm going to mention it again here because it's all the more relevant in this particular workout. I know when discussing the ramp test, I've talked about in videos past that there's this idea that individuals can kind of cheat their way unknowingly and unwittingly through some of the workouts by relying on stronger anaerobic systems, not just high intensity of power, but anaerobic or type 2 muscle fibers. They're able to muscle their way through a pretty decent execution of power for a pretty reasonable period of time, and sometimes that's resulted in inflated FTP values outside of a ramp test, and that may be the default for a number of people, and they're going to start to get through a big portion of that 20 minutes on those anaerobic or type 2 muscle fibers and really start to burn them up. And then by the time when you get to the end towards those testing efforts, if you're doing that and trying to rely more on those fibers throughout the course of these extended efforts, which are longer than what we saw in the last workout, you may have nothing to give, even though you feel like you have some energy left because you've taxed those muscles too much. So try to keep that leg speed a little lighter, a little faster. You're probably going to pay a little bit of a tax in terms of your heart rate and in your breathing, but just keep it controlled. Try to take those nice deep breaths. It may feel a little bit foreign to you, but understand that 88% of your FTP, if your FTP is set correctly, is perfectly achievable for you, and just get through 1 minute at a time. Don't wrench the bike, don't waste any effort gripping the bars, gritting your teeth, grimacing. Just realize that this is something you're capable of doing, and yes, your breathing feels a little bit labored, and yes, your heart rate is a little bit high, but this is not something you can't handle. Keep that cadence light. But that's pretty much it here, guys. The concept is pretty straightforward. You're looking to tax your system and bake some fatigue in for the first hour or so, and then you're going to try to execute a high level of power, those sprint or lead out type of efforts for 30 seconds and 2 minutes, and see how you can perform, and you can compare it against your earlier result. If your power is much lower than workout number 1, or hell, you even have to pull the plug on the last 1 or 2 intervals, that's okay. You've learned something, that your fatigue resistance is something that you can work on. That's generally done with aerobic work. You're not going to increase that capacity by doing more high intensity intervals. You're going to achieve that fatigue resistance by doing longer and more frequent intervals in your aerobic zone, those sustained power efforts, especially those really uncomfortable ones that we all hate around threshold. But I hope you thought this video was helpful. Again, leave any questions, concerns down in the comments below. Anything you want to know about future workouts, leave those there as well so I can make sure to incorporate them. Of course, I appreciate all of the support that you guys continue to give these videos. YouTube-y stuff, it's right down there. Just a little, if you're on mobile, just a little, yeah. Yep, just like that. Thanks for coming. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.